For over 35 years, Todd Garner has overseen blockbuster films like Con Air, Anger Management, Triple X, 13 Going on 30, and the Mortal Kombat franchise.
Why are they letting you make these movies?
Join Todd as he shares tips and stories from the front lines of producing in Hollywood.
I'm Adam Sandler.
I'm Rebel Wilson.
This is Jeff Probst.
I'm Kaylee Cuoco.
I'm Eli Roth.
This is Marlon Wayans.
Hey, it's Ed Helms.
This is Shay Mitchell.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin James, and this is The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide with Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
What a combination.
Welcome to The Producer's Guide, the podcast where we explore the fascinating world of film production and the incredible individuals behind the scenes. I'm Todd Garner, and today we have an extraordinary guest joining us. After a successful nearly 20-year tenure at Walt Disney Studios, Kristin Burr departed the studio ranks in late 2017 to become a producer under her own banner, Burr Productions. Kristin immediately launched Christopher Robin and then went on to produce Dora and the Lost City of Gold, Jingle Jangle, Cruella, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and most recently, Freakier Friday, the sequel to the beloved 2003 classic Freaky Friday. While at Disney, Kristin held the title of Executive Vice President of Production, where she oversaw the development and production of hit films such as Sweet Home Alabama, The Proposal, Wes Anderson's Life Aquatic, and the aforementioned Freaky Friday. I wanted to bring on Kristin today because not only is she a good friend, but she has a unique perspective on the studio executive experience and working on huge IP for the Walt Disney Company. Plus, she has a very, very keen insight into the female audience. Enjoy. All right, I'm here with Kristin Burr. Hello, Kristin. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you? I'm a little jet lagged. I just came back from London, so I've been up since 3 in the morning.
Oh my goodness. And you're shooting Tangled there, correct?
Well, no, we were doing chemistry reads for Flint's and Rapunzel's there. We're going to shoot, knock on wood, in Spain.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Why Spain?
I think because a couple things. A, it's cheaper. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But we don't want it to feel like we shot it on a studio. We want to shoot in the real world. And a lot of it takes place in forests, castles, outside. So we want to, one of the things that we did with Cruella, which I thought really worked effectively, is it felt like you could go there and, experience that world, which is part of the fantasy. And so that was something that Michael Gracie and I really agreed on. We wanted it to feel like, oh, I can go to the town where they shot it. I can go to the forest where they walk through. So, and, there hasn't been a ton of shooting there, so it will feel fresh and new. So all win-win-wins.
Well, you have in your career worked a ton for Disney as you are working for Disney right now. Walk me through how you got there. You went to UCLA, but walk me through getting to become a CE at the Walt Disney Company.
It's a funny story. I think most people when they're younger, I was in my mid-20s and was not qualified for the job at all. And, I worked for a company that doesn't really exist. I don't know if Brad Cravoy has some version of the company now, but that company was sold for its parts and we were all laid off. And so I had 6 months severance, which at the time was 20 grand. I thought I was rich, basically. And I was sort of considering, was this the universe telling me I should go get a real job and maybe I should go work, go to law school, even though I had zero interest in going to law school. But it felt responsible. And I didn't come from a lot of money. So I thought, I have to take care of myself. So I don't know if this Hollywood thing's going to work out. But I went to, at the time, I had worked for Bradley Thomas and Peter Farrelly. And I went to them and asked them, that's how I first met you. You were friends with them. As their assistant, I'd worked for them. And I said, well, what do you think I should do? Should I go to law school? I'd bought an LSAT book and they were like, yeah, exactly. That's about as far as it got. They're like, you like to argue? No. They were basically like, Kristin, we think you're really good at notes. So you should try to become a studio executive. And then also versus going to work at a different production company, if you go there, you're probably going to be the lowest person on the totem pole. You're not going to get a lot of day-to-day experience versus if you're at a studio, you're definitely going to work on movies. and you're definitely going to be involved. And at the time, Disney was looking, and everyone I know was going up for it. And also, like everyone at the time, I thought I was like way too cool for Disney. Meanwhile, God, I know every Disney song ever written. Okay. When I used to have too much to drink in college, I would, sing the Jane and Michael Banks song. I used to go to Disneyland for my birthday every year. And I would always I love music, so I'd always get an album. I mean, I know like the Annette Funicello songs. Okay. I know everything. And so I think I sort of I had two things going for me that I didn't know. One was that they were looking for somebody who knew comedy, and because I worked for, Bradley and the Fairleys, that's basically what they had me doing all the time. I was always reading writers for them. They were interested in producing outside of it, and also, I think sort of I liken it to dating when, you don't give a shit, they like you more,
Uh-huh.
and so I think there was a little bit of that going on, and then, as you well know, I started, and I think within 2 years, there were 3 different heads, you know? So, I'm sure I would have been fired, had that not happened, because I literally had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I just thought, "Oh, studio executives are so corporate and political," which I am neither. Anyway, it gave me a little opportunity to learn the job.
Was there a movie or something early days that inspired you to even get into this career in the first place?
You mean before, like, growing
Yeah,
up?
when you were young.
It's sort of, gut-wrenching to say this now, but, like, it was Rob Reiner.
Mhm.
Like, all of his movies, I mean, the way that he could work in different genres, but still make them so emotionally resonant and poignant where, we can all still quote different scenes from different movies today.
So, was there a specific Rob Reiner movie that you can remember that you can put your finger on?
I mean, I can't The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally. I mean,
Mhm.
even Misery. I remember, in high school going to Misery and, like, walking with my friends outside of it and, like, being terrified,
Right.
like, walk by an alley or whatever. Um, so all of that. I mean, I will say, like, for me, like, the movies I remember as a kid, like, watching The Sound of Music and, like sobbing and being glued to the time at the television, right? And I remember distinctly, I was sitting on my mom's bed and she was like sleeping next to me and I was watching this movie, not allowing her to go to bed.
When you were at Disney, you said you didn't feel you were qualified, didn't know what you were doing. Walk me through kind of those early days of being a creative executive before all the regime changes. We'll get to that. What did you think the job was, and because you had done notes, you had worked for the Fairleys, you worked for Motion Picture Corporation of America.
Mhm.
You knew the business, you were an assistant for a
Sort
while.
of. I mean, I think I was a little more insular, I didn't really understand politics at all, and I think at that time it was sort of a very political climate, so I don't think I understood. I mean, this sounds like it's gonna make me sound like a moron, but I still suffer from this, and I think I have some super skill where I can say things that I'm not supposed to say and I get away with it, and meanwhile, I'm probably only doing that like 5 or 10% of the time, and the rest of the time people are like, "What an asshole." But I think I definitely, you know, suffered from that a little bit. I mean, I think that's also a positive sometimes. I always say, "Well, you never have to guess what I'm thinking," and, I'm not a liar because I say things that other people don't say frequently.
So, but beyond the politics, though, so what regime did you come in under?
It was just when David Vogel was taking over, everything, so DeLine so, like, all of that was happening, and everyone
Mhm.
was, like, calling me, asking me, the groups were joining, and I didn't even know anybody in the groups, like, let alone our group, you know? And so, we were joining with Touchstone, which was your group at the
Mhm.
time, but you
Mhm.
were, like, a fancy EVP, and I knew you a little bit from, you being friends with Bradley in particular.
Well, to walk you through some of the politics of that time, the most interesting thing was that I had worked for Jeffrey for years and years, and really thought, you know what, I don't know this Joe Roth guy. I'm probably going to go to DreamWorks. That got thwarted. I met Joe. We completely got along. He like greenlit 3 of my movies. I was like, oh, I finally feel seen. I
Amazing.
felt like everything was going great. And at that time, Disney and Touchstone Hollywood Pictures were very separate. And pretty much my job on a day-to-day basis was to drive David Vogel crazy. Like I think I had Princess Diaries at the time, but I definitely bought Enchanted. And that just infuriated David, and Donald DeLen loved it. And so David Vogel was not a fan at all. And so when I learned that Donald had been let go and David had gotten the whole studio from Donald, he called me and said, oh, by the way, I'm headed back they were in Colorado or somewhere. He said, oh, by the way, I'm headed back to Los Angeles. And David Vogel's your new boss. I was like, what the hell? How did that happen? That can't be right. This can't be right. And I called Joe and he's like, did you
I wasn't even in Colorado. Okay. So that's to show you what
I wasn't in
level
Colorado. I was in
have.
LA.
Yeah.
Those 2 were in Colorado. No, this was a high level event.
I see.
So I called Joe and I go, what the heck is going on? He said, don't listen. We have plans. You just got to keep your head down. It's all going to work out. We have plans for the ascension. David's not going to be there for very long. So I was like, oh, that's just going to be weird. I don't think I could work for David Vogel. And he said, listen, fine. How about this? I'll give you Hollywood Pictures. You take a couple execs and you take Jerry Bruckheimer, you take Adam Sandler. I was like, oh, awesome. So David was trying to put the groups together and was clearly going to fire me. And I went in and sat with him. And he said, the first words out of his mouth is, he said, yeah, I think you and I both know this isn't going to work. I agree completely, David. So, I already picked the projects I'm going to take, and I think I'll take Varadian and Jason with me. And, good luck. And you can tell as I said it, he had no idea what I was talking about. And I realized Joe had not told him that. So I was like, all right, bye. And I just got up and left. And then 15 minutes later, his office called and said he wanted to have dinner with Nina Jacobson and myself, who I didn't even know at that time.
Right, because Nina had just started, right?
Yeah. Nina and I took a walk around the lot. We totally got on like a house of fire. And I said, I think things are going to change here and that you and I are going to be just fine. And that's how
long was it between
not long.
It wasn't.
It was only a few months. And the craziest part was, it was only a few months. Michael was grooming Peter Schneider. So he was like bringing Peter Schneider up. And Peter Schneider hated David Vogel so much. And I remember defending David in meetings. And like, how am I defending this guy? Like, how did I get in this situation? So it was only a few months before Nina and I got promoted. And then we totally put all the groups together. But anyway, that was a total sidebar of just how crazy studio politics can be.
Yes, there was that infamous where I think I suddenly started to clue in with that infamous meeting we had with Peter Schneider where we were pitching all the projects. Yeah. And you were sitting right next to me. And I remember because you were just like in your own world, checking things off of a list. It's like, what's Todd doing over here? Yeah.
Well, that is so okay. You were a superstar. And so you think you weren't, but you were, obviously. So you come in there, you're under David Vogel, everything's changing. Tell me where you were struggling. Tell me where you were feeling like, besides the politics, which is just insane and it was crazy. And the only reason I had any confidence is I knew the outcome. But walk me through kind of where you felt like insecure and you felt worried, because I never saw that in you.
Yeah, I think I was good at not showing it. I mean, I guess I'll explain it sort of in if you recall at the time when you wanted to get something promoted, when you wanted to be promoted to a vice president, right? You had to get something greenlit. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't easy because you weren't only allowed 1 or 2 projects, and you weren't allowed to spend a lot of money. And also, we had a lot of really strong, smart senior executives who were getting things done. So there weren't a lot of slots available. And we also had a lot of junior executives. Mm-hmm. And so it was one of those situations where you were just like, oh my God, if I don't get this thing going, I'm in trouble. So I had one movie, which I think had been an old project of yours, that I asked to come on to that no one cared about. And we used to, at the time, have these bi-monthly, does that mean twice a month or every other month? Twice a month twice a month, we used to have these meetings with Michael Eisner.
Mhm.
And you would have to talk. And the only thing I could talk about is my one project that was all mine, right? Or actually, I had two, and the other one also no one cared about. Um, I'm going to reveal the secret, but Michael Eisner in the meetings would literally say to me, call it that stupid movie. And I would argue with him, and then after the meeting, I would get in trouble for arguing with Michael Eisner. Now, I'm sure if I went back and watched my old self, I'm sure I was way out of line, you know? But, in my mind, I was like, "Well, what am I supposed to do, agree with him?" Like, of course,
Right.
I have to go up against him and tell him why he's wrong and it's not stupid and da 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 da. And so Disney had a movie that sort of fell apart, and Nina came to me and said, "Okay, well, this is your shot if you can put this movie together." That is also, as a sidebar, I'll tell you where I famously, with Neil Moritz, like, sort of figured out how to get Reese Witherspoon an offer, and so the movie was Sweet Home Alabama.
Mhm.
Well, I'm gonna sidebar on that. So, Nina, at the time, you'll remember the presidents would get like a summer allowance to get a home, like a summer house, and they would I mean, these are like the days of wine and roses. I mean, these are like fancy pants. I don't know that they get these anymore, but
They do not.
we used to, like, rent this place in Malibu, and then she would invite us over, but, like, Nina loves horseback riding, and it's a far drive, and so sometimes she would work from home, and this is also where email was not as popular. This is the early aughts, and so, I was like, "Well, I can't get Nina to pay attention to this right now. I'm sure she's got 5 other people going for this slot." So she's like, "Whatever, every man for himself." And so I was like, "Well, every time you run into Dick Cook, who was then the chair, he would say, 'Hey, kid, what are you excited about?'" So I was like, "Neil, I just have to run into Dick Cook. This is the plan. I'm gonna go you have to call his office and find out if he has a lunch. Just pretend you're gonna be on the lot. And then if he does, I know it's gonna be upstairs, so I just have to hang around his office. Like, I'll cancel my lunch and go hang around," and I tried it 3 times. And finally, I bumped into him and said that, and, he's like, "Yeah, yeah, that's great." And so then I could call slash email Nina and be like, "Oh my god," and I wasn't going over her head. I ran into Dick Cook, and
Totally
this is like,
coincidental.
by the way, this is the first time she's hearing of this story, you know? So
Well,
and so
that's all right. It worked out. It was a hit movie.
no, it's great. But, I mean, I will tell you, like, to say, like, I wasn't loved, it was so I got the movie greenlit, wasn't promoted. That was the rule at the time, wasn't promoted. I was even told right before that, like, "Hey, Kristen, if you get another offer, you should probably consider it." And my opinion at
Let
the
me
time
just
was,
say, for the record, I was
no,
gone by then. This
you
was
were.
not me who did
You were not.
this. Just
No, totally,
okay.
but it was it was, like, all based in, I argued with Michael Eisner. That was, like, my feedback all the time. And so anyway, I was like, "F those guys. I know this movie's gonna work, and so I'm not leaving and letting somebody else take credit. So I'm gonna, hang on even if, whatever." So then the movie came out, made more money than it cost its opening weekend, and I still wasn't promoted. I was like, "Yeah." No, I was so angry about it. But then this is why I always love Neil, and he'll always be a little bit of a mensch to me. He called every studio head and said, "You have to meet Kristen. This is like, I've never seen an exec fight for something more, and she's the best I've ever worked with, and so you should meet her." And so anyway, I went to Nina and I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna do these meetings. Like, I totally understand. I just want you to know." And she's like, "Well, I don't want you to leave." Anyway, and that was sort of
There you
the
go.
beginning.
Leverage. So there's so many things I love about that story. The first is just that how hard you fought for it and you dug in and you realized you had to get something made and you didn't have a lot of movies. So it's
Yeah.
not like you had 50 movies and you just kept buying things. You
I had
had
2.
your small slate. And by the way, Sweet Home Alabama, I bought from Neil with Matthew McConaughey and Ashley Judd
Mhm.
attached.
Mhm.
So these things also change, right, as they go. These things are never just so easy. It never has been so
Yeah,
easy. And
Charlize
what
Theron was attached at one point. Yeah.
and what I love about it is that you just kept fighting, and you even argued with Michael Eisner, which people kept bringing up because it's such a weird, rare thing for somebody to actually stand on the table and fight for movies. And it's something I always did, which is why I always felt a kinship to you. And I know that there was and it was quote unquote so much easier to get movies made back then. Yet you were still standing on the table and fighting. And the reason why Neil Moritz called all those studio heads is because you did that. So it's just such a lesson. It's a lesson for people, everybody now who's in the business. You've got to stand up for what you believe in. If you love a movie, you've got to get it made because it's the only thing you're going to be remembered for. Your bio doesn't say, "Oh yeah, you were a good note taker and you really fell in line and agreed with everything Michael Eisner said." No, it talks about all the movies you got made, and I'm sure there are just as harrowing of stories of each of these movies you got made in as exec and certainly as a producer. So it's just such a testament to you and to your career, and also just such a great lesson for people to learn that you really do have to fight. Even back then, which everyone looks so fondly back in the days of how easy it was, you still had to really fight and trick people and be at the right place, quote unquote, coincidentally, to get your movies made. And so that really was your first training of being a producer. I mean, you worked on a lot of great movies at
Can I
Disney.
add one little bit though? Because I do want to
Of course.
Michael Eisner, to his credit, and I still have it somewhere, I think, in the basement on opening weekend. Remember back in the day when we actually got, real trades and they were brought to our office in the mornings or whatever? He sent to me on the cover, it was, whatever Sweet Home ended up making, and it won that weekend. And he wrote on it, "You were right, I was wrong, Michael."
Yeah, he was always great at that. I mean, I remember when Nina and I had to present to the board our slate when we took over. So we made sizzles for all our movies, and it was like Pearl Harbor and Remember the Titans, The Waterboy. I can't remember. There was a bunch of movies in there. The slate was looking really good. I think probably 101 Dalmatians was in there. And we showed Michael the sizzle, and he said, "Yeah, you got to take out that cemetery movie with Denzel. I don't understand what that was." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, he's talking about like the Confederate or the Civil War. What was that?" I said, "Remember the Titans. It's a football movie." He goes, "Why are they in a cemetery talking about the Civil War?" And I was like, "That's like the best scene in the movie."
It really
He goes,
is.
"Take it out. That's not good. That movie's not going to work." So we took it out. We didn't include it. And of course, it went on to make a ton of money. And then he was fine. Like he look at that high level, everybody thinks that they have some sort of magic, that they know everything. And what was great about Michael is he entrusted us to do our jobs and to live and die by those decisions. And when we were right, he rewarded us, and we were wrong, we learned and we moved on. So
it's our job also in producing and being an executive to be able to, like, we all entered this business because we love movies, we love TV, we love entertainment, we like to tell stories. And so it's upon us to be able to explain to people why, and to be able to fight for that if necessary. And I think sometimes people like it. It's like they want you to fight. They're trying to challenge you to that position. Or at least that's what I tell myself.
Well, it is true. Well, the reason I gave you Sweet Home Alabama is because you're you. And you obviously are drawn to these kind of movies. If you look at your career, you make a lot of movies for the female audience, and you love that genre, and you're really, really good at it, and really good at the details of it, and really good at the story of it and the characters. And so you do have a skill that is unique. And that is the thing. We have to empower the younger people who have a propensity for certain genres or certain kind of movies, because everybody can't keep making the same things, and everybody's not great at superhero movies, and everybody's not great at IP. And so everybody that has a unique voice and talent has to be listened to, because that's how we get diversity in our movies, and diversity in the genres, and diversity in the marketplace, because there are audiences out there that are wanting to watch stuff that we're not giving them. And there is a huge, and what's so funny is every time a female-driven movie comes out that hits it on the nose, it overperforms like 10x. And then every time everyone's surprised. everyone's like, well, how did that happen? Well, you have an underserved audience and they were delivered something they absolutely love. And they go in droves and they go with their girlfriends and they go with their moms and their sisters and they drag their boyfriends along sometimes. But like these movies always are massive and we miss the boat on them every time. And the only reason those get made is people like you who are really good at it. And so we need to empower those executives who like different genres and who like different things than just the traditional things that the corporation is making. So that's what I've always loved about you as an executive. So you finished your time out as an executive at Disney as an EVP, that vaulted job that you wanted, you remember as being so fancy, which I also think is the best job in Hollywood because you have your own
I
movies.
think everyone does, right?
Yeah, you got your own movies. You get a paycheck. You never have to say no, and you can only say yes, and everybody loves you. So
right, no one bothers you. You sort of get to buy what you want. You can. I mean, I used to like when I think about it. I used to go to New York at least twice a year just to see theater. It was the best trip. I mean, look, I packed them. I wasn't hanging out, but like, I mean, pretty nice. Go see 8 shows in a week or whatever. It was great.
So when you had that job, you get to the level of EVP, which is the job you remember me having when we transitioned.
When I first met you. I mean, when I first started
and so
Disney.
you're like, oh, that's a fancy job. When you had that job, how was it different for you from being a CE to EVP? Like, how did you approach that job as an executive vice president at a studio?
I mean, I think it probably not that different, to be honest, than as a CE. Because I think for me, part of what makes it easier to fight for things is I always consider myself the underdog. And it sort of is mirroring what you were talking about earlier. And maybe it's just that people don't like for whatever reason, even though women represent over half the population, we still categorize their movies as like a subgenre, as if, they don't have the potential to be huge like any other thing. So I always position myself as to be like being the passionate advocate where I have to convince people. And that, I don't know, I like that position. I like when, people have low expectations. There's only one way to go, up.
Right. And so where do you feel like your tastes really cemented? Whereabouts in that from CE to EVP, you started to realize, oh, I know what a Kristin Burr movie is?
Oh my God, I'm not even sure I would know what that is today. I just know that, like, yes, I tend to like things that put joy in the world. In a very overly simplistic way, but like that sort of make you feel better when you leave than when you entered. That doesn't mean that they're just pure comfort, which by the way, I certainly enjoy many of those things. And I think that is like part of a major attribute for quote unquote, female driven material. But I also like things that push the envelope and have commentary behind it. And what I love about Disney is you can do that sort of sneaky. And people aren't really realizing what's happening. With Cruella, for example, you add a little bit of camp. And I mean, it's a really counterculture statement that we're making. I mean, the movie is about revenge, but it's like poetic justice because the woman who, killed her mother is framed for a murder that she didn't commit, but she committed in the exact same way that she'd murdered her mother. So it's like such a satisfying feeling. But it's pretty dark for a Disney movie. There's a lot of murder,
There's a lot of murder in Disney movies, by the way. Usually the mother gets murdered right away. So you have worked on a lot as a producer, a lot of IP. You've worked on Christopher Robin, Dora, Cruella, Freakier Friday. Now you're doing the Tangled. Is it Tangled? Is that what it's called? Or just you said Rapunzel, but it's Tangled. Are you going to call it Rapunzel?
Well, interestingly, no. It's going to be called Tangled. Interestingly, Disney Folklore, it was called Tangled as an animated film because they wanted to appeal to boys.
Oh, okay. So that's perfect. This is a perfect segue. So you've worked on all this huge IP that is so important to Disney. I remember Jeffrey very famously said, "You can do anything, just do not fuck with the brand. You guys make 10% of the profit and you get 90% of the press. The parks and ABC make 90% of the profit and get 10% of the press. Do not fuck with the brand. So you have a huge responsibility when you're given this IP, and you're given this IP that is also right in the heart of what Disney's audience is that, the whole princess audience, the family audience. Walk me through how you approach that. What are there rules? Is there guidelines? How are you approaching handling this IP? Because like you just said, there's a lot of murder in Cruella. Where do you, and you've been very successful every time out. What is your North Star when dealing with this IP?
I mean, oh God, I don't know. Like you're putting more pressure and importance than I think I'm considering. I'm looking at it as this is a movie that I need to make, just like all of them, as good as possible. I need to deliver what people are expecting from it, and also hopefully go beyond those expectations, primarily emotionally. Like I don't make a lot of movies that, we're saving the world or there are explosions involved. It's, people realizing how they want to live their life.
And so you were making that the explosion.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are taking IP and kind of bending it like you did with Cruella, and I would even say, I'm sure are going to do that with Tangled. How much do you consider how much we can bend it because the fans want the same, but they don't want the same? How do you approach how much you can bend the IP? Or as do you say, do you ignore that and just say, I'm going to make the best version of this movie, IP be damned?
I mean, I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, I would be like, it's easier for me to talk about specifics because each one is different, as you know. I mean, if suddenly with with Tangled, if, we changed the story and she suddenly became a damsel in distress, which is what's so beautiful about Tangled, is she isn't. Her I want has nothing to do with like hoping a man will come and save her. Her I want discovery. I want to see the world. And basically when the man comes and they end up having this sort of dynamic, he's following her around.
Right.
She's in charge. And so if suddenly I switch that back to what may have been the traditional Rapunzel, I'd be fucking murdered, nor would I want to make that movie. I mean, there was somebody who came in, I think early on, who wanted to direct it and referred to her as a damsel in distress. And I was like, out, you apparently don't understand what this is. And like, if you're talking about like, oh, she should be talking about a boy in the beginning, out. That is literally the opposite of what this is. And so you sort of have to understand what it is in its DNA and make sure you protect all of that. But then, I mean, with something like Cruella, that started, somebody had come in to pitch 103 Dalmatians. And at the time I was with Sean Bailey and Alan Horn, and they basically said, no, we don't want that. And I said, well, we should just do an origin of Cruella. And they said, great, let's do that. And and then it became, well, what's it going to be? And because, unlike Tangled, which has at least a story that obviously we're going to stick close to, but also deviate and push boundaries. But with Cruella, it was an empty, a blank canvas that all we knew was that we had to like do little bits, little touches of 101 here and there for the fan base, whether it's people who look like their dogs, whether it's Cruella driving insanely in the DeVille, whatever the things are, casting Horace and Jasper to be one tall and thin and one short and chubby, whatever the things are that are for the fans, yes. But I mean, honestly, when Dana Fox and I were talking about it, we kept talking about it as a soap opera, and that's what a lot of fairy tales are, and even, this is so cheesy, but even when we were talking back and forth over and over again about it, every time we would pitch something dramatic, we would say, and then dun dun dun, this happens. Dun, 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 it's her mother, And so that was like, if we could push ourselves to do that, and to your point, in Disney movies, people are so used to mothers dying. I'm like, let's get rid of lots of mothers. Let's like mother this up. And so that was sort of how we started it, but like, it's a villain, so you're given a little bit of a license. She is so over the top. I mean, we used to also just describe her almost as a drag queen, and wherever she went, there was always a breeze that would slam a door. That was sort of who she was as a character. And
Right.
so how could we personify that? And then, I mean, for me personally, look, there's a thing about certain types of movies I like to work on that, it goes into the comfort category where it's like they're beautiful to look at, whether it's production design. I love clothes, as you know, I love fashion. And so it was really important to me on Cruella that she was a fashion designer and like how could we set it in the '70s, which was sort of the birth of punk rock in London. How could we take advantage of that, and make, sort of imply that Cruella had created punk rock?
That's what's so great. That's what makes the movie so great. And you're so attuned to that. And that's what makes you great at it, is you're really good at that and attuned to that and the fashion and the history of fashion and punk rock. And that's what takes it and elevates it from just a normal remake to something that stands on its own. That's incredible.
I appreciate all the compliments. I wish I could take all the credit. I mean, there's so many people who were involved. Dana Fox
Of
wrote this.
course. Of
Tony
course.
McNamara. I mean, Craig Gillespie was the perfect director for it
Yeah.
in that he makes the camera move. All of the music is all Craig. Um, I will take credit for the fashion.
And you mentioned the I Want, which is something that I had not heard till I got to Disney. So is that something that you learned at Disney? And can you describe what it is?
It's generally in a musical, and it's at the beginning, it's very simple. It's the beginning where our protagonist tells the audience what they're looking for, what they want out of life. And so, you know, most of the time in our older fairy tales, they tend to be about finding romance.
Mhm.
And so, what makes Tangled and Rapunzel different, as I said earlier, is that's not what it is. And, that's what makes it more modern and to me more exciting.
A couple of movies that Disney has made recently had some trouble with the fans,
Mhm.
either in terms of casting or tone or whatever. When you are testing these movies that are so beloved and so known, like Freaky Friday and Tangled and even like Dora and Christopher Robin,
Mhm.
what testing is already tense, but did you have any surprises? Is there anything you learned during the testing that surprised you or made you realize, whoa, we did deviate too far, or no, we hit it right on the money?
This is gonna make me sound so lame, but our tests have gone really well, but I think it's because we spend all the time ahead of time making sure that it's gonna work in certain ways. But I mean, I can tell you stories of other that weren't things that I necessarily worked on, but it was like, where I remember Alan Horn once coming into a room and talking about how when he used to work at Warner Brothers and they released the Sex and the City movie, how like the men all came into the staff meeting on Monday shocked that women went to go see Sex and the City to see clothes. And not one woman in our staff meeting was shocked by that. We were all like, uh-huh, that's exactly why. What's wrong with you? And you go with all of your friends. And
Right.
so that's always sort of the goal of what one of these movies are. It's like, how can you make it so that like you appeal to a bunch of people who all want to go see it together so they can talk about it and revel in the comfort and sort of like revel sort of in whatever the critical side of it is as well. However, we're pushing the boundaries.
And besides women wanting to go to movies with their friends to see clothes, are there any other like foundational things you have in working on these movies for the female audience? Like, what are some of
Yeah.
your foundational things? Because, like, I gotta say, the action movies, it's like the whammo chart. You gotta get your explosions. Make sure your hero has a goal at, preferably try to enter the Diane Warren song to trick him into thinking it's for females.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. No, I mean, I think part of it is like what I'm trying to say. Like, part of it is just like there's a comfort food level to it, and that comes in. A lot of times people joke about rom-coms and like, oh, I know it was going to end. I know, like, it's so predictable, and that is the whole point. Like,
Right.
what a bummer if you're doing this whole thing about finding this perfect person and then you don't end up together. And sometimes that is what's right. People argue like La La Land, they don't end up together. I'm like, yeah, he didn't go to her play. They shouldn't end up together.
Well, speaking of Rob Reiner, there's this story that he had it ending in a different way. And when he met his wife on the set of that movie, he changed the ending so they could be together because he was so cynical. He didn't think people should be together. But once he was in love, he realized that romance is a real thing and is deserving.
But that's also a perfect example of a movie that is comfort, but also is critical thinking. I mean, it became like, water cooler discussion. Can you be friends with someone of the opposite sex? And that just became a thing. So that can be simple, but I think all good, quote unquote, girl movies have both.
And firmly established that you have to run at the end to get to the person. Otherwise, it's not satisfying.
Yeah.
And preferably in an airport. If you can find an airport and
Always
run in
an
it,
airport.
chef's kiss.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think now it's become so cliche that you sort of have to subvert that or figure out a way to top it. But yes, I mean, even as you're sitting there going, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing it. I guarantee you, if we changed it, everyone would be mad, even if they say that's not what they want.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say, you've worked on so many of these movies, both as an executive and as a producer. I would imagine that in these test screenings, when things like, it was predictable comes up, you can just confidently ignore that, realizing that's just part of the process and kind of see the forest through the trees and get data that actually matters to you.
Yeah. Well, and also you look at what percentage is actually saying that, because then they also say what was their favorite part, the ending. And so, and I mean, this is something that everyone says, but I really do think it's true. Numbers are important sometimes, and sometimes there's something specific that it tells you something, although often the most loved scene is often also the most hated, which to me says fantastic because it evokes an emotion. But it's really about watching the audience.
Yes.
Because, if people are getting up to go to the bathroom in droves, that is not a good sign. If I'm like a weirdo who just because at that point, how many times have we seen the cut? It feels like a million. Like we're at the point where we can recite it,
Right.
And so, and I'm always so grateful for those moments because that's when we start getting real harsh on the cut, where we're just like, oh my God, cut that joke. This takes too long. And it's just because we've seen it so many times. And then you watch it with an audience and they're engaged or they're laughing or they're crying or whatever the emotion that we're hoping is happening. And then you go, oh, right, that does work. That is great. But watching people not cry or not laugh or whatever, although I do say there's always you always get to have one or two jokes that are just for you, even if everybody doesn't. Yeah. That makes it fun.
Well, we're also insecure, so we don't want there to be any dead spots. We don't want there to be jokes that don't land. We don't want there to be any miscues. When first time directors ask me to describe what it's like going to a preview for the first time, I said, well, it's like, imagine standing in front of 400 people naked and giving each person a laser pointer and then saying to them, point out my flaws directly. Let them all laser point and they'll see them all. I didn't know I had a mole there. What is happening?
Yeah, especially, I know. And I'm going to be really, so when, you have the focus group, which I think sometimes can be really valuable. And then sometimes it just becomes contagious.
Yeah. What else didn't you like about it? What else didn't you like about it? What else didn't you like about it? And well, if you're asking, let me think of something.
It's well, I didn't really like that person's hair. And then all of a sudden you're like, you don't like their hair? What? And then the other 15 are like, oh yeah, I'm not sure about the hair. So you're like, what? What's happening over here?
Yeah.
And then you're looking at this person in their hair, and their hair looks like, not ironically, something from the 80s. And you're like, why am I listening to this person who's wearing acid wash jeans that they've had since the 80s? They're not wearing them as a hipster now.
Right. So when you were an EVP, before you became a producer, what did you think a producer did?
I mean, I think I knew what they did, in terms of finding material, being a passionate advocate for it, obviously all of the same developing things. I think what I didn't understand, even though I knew it, and this is where I didn't understand, because a lot of people that I made a lot of movies with had deals on the lot. So I didn't really understand that they were working for free. Even
Right.
though I knew it, I didn't get it. I wasn't thinking about it. I was like,
Right.
Like, to me, I was like, listen, why am I working on this movie harder than you? I still get
Right.
paid, if it gets made or not. You know,
Right.
I again, I think partly it was because most of the producers I was working with had overall deals and so had some form of income coming in or were making a lot of movies. So it was like they were making money. But I would sometimes like wonder why I felt like I was working harder on their project than they were at the moment. I was like, oh well, they're shooting a movie and this one is like, on a scale of 1 to 10, if it's going to happen, maybe a -5.
Right.
So they're probably not, it's not their biggest priority. It wasn't until I became a producer, I realized, I thought I sort of, because I think I've told you this before, but I always like, to me, the producing part was always the best part of of whatever, my job was as an executive. I would always like sort of find reasons to be on set forever.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, oh, so and so's not there. I've got to go to set for 2 months,
Right.
and they would be like,
Right.
what are you
Right.
doing? Why are you
Right.
there?
Right.
Mark Varadian gave me like great advice when I first started at Disney. He said, you sort of have to decide what sort of executive you want to be. Because you can only be one. And I find this is also a problem of some executives now. So I try to share the wisdom. I don't think they take it as well as I think I did. But the advice was sort of, you can either be the person who shows up a couple weeks late, stereotypically wearing a suit, scary, like ordering people around, like freaking out the crew. Or you can be the person who shows up at crew call and is one of the team. So that
Mm-hmm.
means like if something goes wrong, you're not going to immediately become the studio. Like your job, you're one of the team, so you're trying to figure out how to fix it with everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think I was always that, even to the point where I'd get in trouble where I would just approve like overages and stuff like that because I knew it was better for the movie.
Did you feel ready to be a producer when you became a producer?
I think I did, but I didn't realize, because again, I thought, oh, I spent all this time. I don't think I realized the intricacies because obviously I wasn't dealing with, now I have a thing, I'm sure you do this too, Todd, but I not only show up at call, but I always show up at least an hour before because I want to check on the actors and check on the ADs
Yeah,
and make sure.
of
But
course.
it's also part of it is like I want them to know that I'm there. So like I'm there at the same time you are, I'm here the same amount of hours. But also so they can feel like they always have somebody to complain to, but also they can't then blame. I always find like if you would come in later, it would be like, oh, so-and-so was late and they're all blaming each other. Now there's no way.
You've been an executive and now you're a producer. How have you found the last 5 years? Like, where are you seeing it going? And what, if you had to like give advice to people that are doing the job right now, what would it be?
Producing job?
Either producing and being a studio exec.
I think it's it's a hard job because as we know, it feels like we're making less. And I'm like you, I don't want to be negative. I want to be positive, but I feel like the only way that we're going to win is to be passionate and remember why we came in.
Mhm.
Like, why do we love this business? Why do we want to make movies? Um, I don't we're not in this. If we want to be safe, there are so many other jobs that we could do that could make us a decent amount of money where we, work normal hours and are guaranteed paychecks.
Mhm.
But that's not why we're in it. We're in it to like put joy in the world. We're in it to create art. We're in it to, change the world.
Yeah. And not get paid until the movie gets made. So it's very important that we all are passionate together because we have to make stuff to keep the business healthy. And we can't just give up and throw up our hands and go, oh, well, the business is terrible. The audience isn't there. I guess it's just is what it is. Because I do feel like there's so much fear. And we've talked a lot about this on all the episodes about faith over fear. And at some point, as a producer, you have to just have faith that it's going to work out because you believe in it. And you've done it so many times. You did it way back when with Sweet Home Alabama, and you're doing it every time you get a movie made now. Is you're picking it up and having faith that you're going to be able to get it made. What I do find fascinating is, and I don't know, maybe you don't have this issue. I do find that I look at your bio and I look at your resume, and I would say, oh, Kristin, she's got it. I don't have to worry about this movie, especially like the fashion and the performances and the casting and the day-to-day being on set and handling the problems. I'm sure everybody just totally leaves you alone, right? In the last 5 years. I'm sure they do. I mean, they don't leave me alone, so I can imagine they don't leave you alone either. But what do you think that is? What do you think? I don't feel like I did that as an exec very much, unless things were going wrong. But I do feel like now there's so much fear, and I guess it's just there's just this general worry that it's not going to be undeniable or not going to be exactly what they want. I do feel like there's a lot more like hand wringing and worried faces. And I don't know that that's the way to be the most creative, actually.
No, totally. I mean, I totally agree. And I also want to say I empathize and sympathize with it's a really difficult position to be in,
Mhm.
because I mean, everything becomes more corporatized and it becomes a bottom line. And as we know, like making movies is not a math equation, because if it was, we would all have hit movie after hit movie. It relies on your gut and your instinct and your love and your ability to convince people um, of something that you believe in, right? And so that sort of goes for everyone in these positions. And I think sometimes people are rewarded for being quieter
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
not rocking the boat and, you know, making whatever the thing that is told to them to make. But, I mean, look, I can always find passion in anything, I will make why I believe in something, that's just part of who I am. But, like, what a horrible existence if you're just, it's not about what you want or what you believe in, and you're just trying to fulfill other people's beliefs and
Mhm.
desires. That's again, it's not why we came into it. It's like, you know, how many people were affected by Rob Reiner? I mean, that guy
Mhm.
worked in every genre. Like, that's unheard of nowadays.
Mhm.
Like, I'm sure that people told him no and he couldn't do it, and, like, this wasn't gonna work, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure that that happened to him repeatedly. But,
Right.
like, can you imagine now? It's like, if a guy who did a rom-com wanted to do a a dark thriller.
Yeah. Our courtroom through. Yeah.
Yeah, people would be like, is that gonna work? Is that the right guy?"
Yeah. Well, listen, it's true through all of the arts, right? I watched the Taylor Swift documentary, and it's Taylor Swift, by the way, and she has one point where she's backstage and she's holding uh, hands with her whole crew, and they're about to do a show, and she talks about the fact that 98% of the people in their life is going to tell them that you can't do this. There's no way you're going to be a rock star, a pop star, a dancer, a performer. It's just everybody tells you no. And what I'm most concerned about is that these younger generation are going to get through the 98% of their friends and family. They're going to tell them no, and then they're going to get to the corporation, young Kristin Burr, and not fight for Sweet Home Alabama and tell Michael he's wrong, and not you know, Shanghai Dick Cook in the meat and lunchroom and that's so sad that you went through all of that work and time and getting through the gauntlet of your family and friends telling you you'll never make it in the entertainment
Yeah.
business. It's too hard, only to kind of give up when you get into the corporate room because it's just so scary to lose your job. And I know that I there I always thought I was going to get fired. In fact, I completely thought I was going to get fired when the David Vogel thing happened. And you kind of go,
Yeah.
well, I did everything right. And I'm making movies, and my boss's boss seemed to really like me. Well, I guess just the politics just took over. There's no controlling it. It turned out not to be the case. The other dude got fired. But like, you can't control that politics. You can only, and I promise you, the only reason I survived that regime consolidation was because I was making a lot of really cool movies at the time. And Joe was like, I'm keeping that guy because he makes really cool movies. And Kristin Burr was fighting for cool movies. And Nina was fighting for cool movies. And Mark Rodin was fighting for cool movies. The people that stayed were the people that made movies and fought for the movies. And the other people kind of fell, I can't remember who they are, kind of fell by the wayside and didn't survive the consolidation. There's always been consolidation. So, and there always will be expansion and contraction. And so I just pray that
There's
people
always
will
new
listen to you.
technology. There's always new things.
Always.
Yeah.
I just hope that anybody below the level of president can just find it in their heart to try to fight for things and really have the courage like you did, even though you did it. And people kept saying, oh, Kristin Burr, she's the one that argued with Michael Eisner. That's fucking cool. I mean, to my opinion, that's cool. Like, I think that's like, and you got a thing that you hung on to, which is Michael sending you this Variety hand sign saying you were right. That's got to make you feel like, fuck, it was worth it. And you did the right thing.
Yeah, but it was a long time. It was a long time to get there. That was years, before I got that. It ended up being great.
You kept your head down the whole time when you didn't get that letter right away. So if you were a young executive or a young producer now, not that you're not a young producer, but if you were
I'm not young.
just starting out producer
I'm firmly
or just starting out
okay.
executive, the Kristin Burr of the CE years, what advice would you have for them now?
I mean, it's sort of, I feel like we're going to be repetitive. It's what we've been talking about. And I do want to say there are executives out there who fight for things. There are executives out there who are passionate and are filmmakers. And I try to work with them as much as I can because of who they are.
Another reason to be that, by the way, because people like you want to work with them. And yes, there absolutely are. There absolutely are.
Yes. It's, I think it's people, you don't have to be good at everything. You have to figure out what you're good at, which can be many different things. I think, obviously you hope that everyone is good with story and loves story, but honestly, that's not everybody's thing. Some people are very good at people relationships. Everyone loves them. I think you have to figure out what you're good at and do that. But I also think if you're not willing to fight for something, what are you doing? What are we doing?
And finding your taste and finding what you're really good at and being in the room and being the best at that thing in the room will make you invaluable.
Right. And I remember early on, what I really loved about her, Nina Jacobson, was that she knew what she was good at, but she also knew what she wasn't good at. And she was real vocal about it. And she used to say to me all the time, Kristin, is this funny? I'm not good at comedy. What do you think? And I love that about her because especially as you rise in the ranks, I think sometimes I always say to people, would you rather be right or get what you want? And sometimes I feel like people would rather be right. And in the meantime, they sacrifice what they want. And it's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kristin, for doing this. I appreciate you. I appreciate you very much. Love you. And always end this way. Best memory on set.
It's a hard one because I've had a bunch of good ones, but
you can name as many as you want.
I think it was, we were shooting Christopher Robin in Dover at an old sort of abandoned train station. And we were trying to pick up a tag for the movie. And I'm going to screw up the Tao of Pooh saying, but it was sort of along the lines of sometimes doing nothing is the very best something, right? And so the tag of the movie was supposed to be everybody just doing nothing, enjoying themselves on the beach. Well, it was cold, and the beach, like most beaches in England, are rocks. Unlike us Angelinos who are used to sand, I was like, what are these rocks? This is not, no one wants to lie on a rock. And it was probably 45 degrees. And we were fighting the daylight. But what we were supposed to be doing is everybody was supposed to, all the characters were supposed to be at the beach in their little beach chairs. And we wanted the beach to be full. So Mark Forster, who was directing it, thought it would be fun to put the crew in. And so he had the Jennies, who are our older ladies, I would say conservatively in their 60s, like on beach chairs getting massaged. And and Mark with his Swiss German accent is screaming at the Jennies with his bullhorn, telling them to smile and look like they're having a good time, and they just want no part of it whatsoever. And like the lights going down, it's cold, or like everybody's there, but the entire crew is like crying, laughing because of the situation we're in. And it just sort of like permeated onto the screen because everybody was feeling the same thing. Like, we're like, how joyful is this and crazy is this, but like, how beautiful.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Great story. And just such a testament to exactly who you are and what you bring to the world. You do bring such joy and comfort to the world, both as a person and through your movies. So I'm really appreciative of you doing this. Thank you, love.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Todd.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of The Producer's Guide. If you're a fan of this podcast, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. And if you got any questions about producing, send me a DM on X at Todd_Garner. I want to thank my producer, Steve Delamater. And until next week, I'm Todd Garner. See you then.